Jump it up a little.
I'm going to call the meeting to the Water Pollution Control Authority meeting on this Tuesday, January 16, 2018, 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Councilor Arnone.
Here.
Councilor Bosco. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Are we ready? I'll start over.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Arnone.
Here.
Commissioner Bosco. Commissioner Sakala.
Here.
Commissioner Cristati.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Denny.
Here.
Commissioner Falk.
Here.
Chairman Ludwig.
Here.
Commissioner Muller.
Here.
Vice Chairman Suzak.
Here.
Commissioner Ongire.
Here.
There's 10 members present, one is absent.
Move on to approval of minutes. The regular meeting, May 18, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
By Commissioner Suzak,
Second.
second by Commissioner Arnone. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Against, abstentions? We have 8 in favor, 2 abstentions. Yep, 2 abstentions. Yep. Motion to approve regular meeting, May, 3 abstentions? Sorry.
Bob, you abstaining?
Yeah.
7 in favor, 3 abstentions, sorry. Regular meeting, May 15, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Commissioner Suzak, seconded by Commissioner Denny. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor to show of hands, please raise your hand. Against, abstentions. 7 in favor, 3 abstentions. Item 3, special guest, Woodard and Curran, Jonathan Blimes. Did I ruin your name? Blimes, Water Pollution Control Upgrade Project. I got to get the pronunciation and I'll get it.
Suzak down.
I got
Come
it.
down.
Sorry. Good evening. Jonathan Bilmes, Director of Public Works.
Bilmes, all right, very good.
Bilmes,
I got it,
that's
I
okay.
noted.
I'll introduce my colleagues at the table in a moment. We're going to spend this evening talking about the Water Pollution Control Upgrade Project. This is tonight's agenda. As I said, Jonathan Bilmes, Director of Public Works. This is about a 20-minute presentation. We wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And for the benefit of the new council members and also the returning council members who maybe have not had a detailed update in the recent past, we're going to do a executive summary of all the issues. And hopefully, again, there'll be enough information here for your to generate questions, but we'll not start out going into the weeds, but we can always get there. In terms of the project team, again, my name is Jonathan Bilmes, Director of Public Works. Behind me in the orange shirt is Kevin Schlatz, the Water Pollution Control Superintendent. Of course, you know Brian. Also behind me, I'm going to ask him to raise his hand, is Kevin Flood. He's the owner's project manager from Fuss & O'Neill, and we'll talk about what that role is in the project during the presentation. And to my right is Jay Sheehan. He's the project lead, the officer in charge from Woodard and Curran. And to his right is Shelby Beauchemin, who's the acting project manager. There's actually 2 on the job. The other one is en route or may not make it tonight. And there are some other support staff listed here. I also want to acknowledge there's a couple employees from the Water Pollution Control Plan in the audience, too. We encourage as many as they could to come tonight to also hear the update firsthand. They're obviously very interested in the project and what's happening. So we're going to start with an overview. Most of the equipment here is older than 40 years, and as you know, that means it needs to be replaced. The last major equipment replacement here was in 2004, which is in the middle of the screen, was an environmental upgrade for nitrogen. Tonight, we're going to focus on recent events, recent being 2013 and more recent than that. And we'll also discuss why the last bullet here on this timeline shows pump station design just starting in 2018. An important thing to remember as we talk about this project, where we are, where we're going, is that it discharges to the Connecticut River. All the wastewater that's treated in Enfield at the plant goes to the Connecticut River. So this is a major environmental project, not only for Connecticut, but for the entire state. Impacts on environment and public health. So we need to keep that in mind as we talk about dollars and cents and rates and things like that too. There's a higher purpose here. So let's start with 2013. As I said, we're going to start in the more recent past. The first thing we did was as it says here, a capital plan and rate study. And we needed to do this process to be eligible for Clean Water Fund grant money. So prior to 2013, the wastewater treatment plant costs were in the tax base. So we needed to separate those out and go to a standalone enterprise fund or revenue fund, which was done, again, as adopted in 2013. I think it went into effect January 1st, 2014. So the purpose here was to provide a steady stream of funds for the water pollution control infrastructure and put it on a firm financial footing. Prior to this time, actually, the water pollution control plant would borrow from the general fund and, in fact, is paying that money back over time, but was always competing for capital projects with everything else in town. And that's why, for example, there had been no significant improvements since 2004. And that obviously couldn't continue, was not a good thing. And as I said, needed to be done to qualify for Clean Water Fund grants. One of the things we did in 2013 was benchmarked the proposed sewer rate with our neighboring municipalities. And as you can see from this table, we are in the low end. Now, when the rate was adopted, this is a rate based on 200 gallons a day, it was more in the middle, but it's been steady for 5 years. There's been no changes in the Enfield sewer rate for 5 years, and other rates have gone up, so now we're on the low end. Another point to make from this chart is that the amount of money that the typical Enfield or citizen would pay for wastewater is much less than what everyone is paying for the potable water that you're drinking. It's an order of magnitude, it's at least half than Hazardville and much less than for Connecticut water. Just trying to keep things in perspective. So that was done. The next major thing that had to be done was a facilities plan. This was a top to bottom look at the whole system, not just the plant, but also pump stations, piping. There were smoke tests that were done to see who had illegal connections. There were meetings looking at consistency with the town's plan of conservation and development, all this big picture look at it. And this was funded 55% by the state of Connecticut. And again, this was a DEP requirement. We couldn't keep moving until we did this. They needed to see this facilities plan and see how this project fit in the big picture in town. One of the things that has been a constant in this project is public outreach and information. And I think that's one of the reasons why the referendum passed by a good margin. There's always been public outreach and public input since we started back in 2013. And we tried to be as transparent as possible. And there is a dedicated website that was specially designed for this part of the project, and you can get to it through the Town of Enfield Water Pollution Control page. It's got tons of information. It's got our minutes, our project team minutes, agendas, important documents, and lists of all the work required. And it's very easy to use. It's a intuitive, visual type of website where I think you can find things quite easily. And again, we worked with Woodard and Curran on developing that, and I think it's a good tool. Let's just spend a minute on the collection system. During the facilities planning, in 2015, identified a lot of work that needed to be done at the pump stations. So again, we can do all we want at the plant, but we've got to get the wastewater to the plant. That involves pipes, manholes, and pump stations. There are 16 pump stations in town. Many of those are very old and need work. We know that. We had hoped that as part of this initial source of funding, that is the $36 million, that we'd have been able to do more with the pump stations. But other more pressing needs at the plant and with some of the piping have reduced the amount of money that we have right now available for pump station work. We still have money included for designing what we call the high priority pump stations, and those are in the asterisks. We've identified 7 pump stations, again, that we need to tackle first. And also we've started to set aside money, recognizing that the referendum, $36 million, probably wasn't adequate. We've started to set aside money in our annual capital. And we've done that this year. We set aside $550,000, and the idea being that every year we would set aside $550,000 in the annual capital budget, and then we have a preliminary schedule that would fund all the pump station upgrades over time. So again, the idea being a consistent financial model, putting aside X dollars every year, and planning for the outcome. And I think that some of the other discussions about facilities and vehicles, one of the other benefits of that is, of course, we like to do all the work at once, but by staging the pump station work, then they don't all need to be redone again the same year. They would be sequenced in. So like other things you've been talking about, long-term capital improvements, this would be consistent with that idea. And that was all transmitted back about a year ago, that this was the idea and the plan which we've been implementing. And during the questions and answers, Woodard and Curran and or Kevin Schatz can discuss any of the work at the pump stations. Let's move on to the plant. Obviously, being most of it over 40 years old, almost everything needs to be upgraded or replaced. It's not a surprise. And as we got into the detailed design, we realized that some of the needs were a bit larger than we originally thought. One of the things that came up in the lower right-hand view here is this flood protection issue, which came up fairly late in the project. And it added costs, has added some costs, and has delayed us somewhat. Basically, we need to protect from the 100-year flood. The Beeman's Brook runs over there, down behind the dog pound. And so after many discussions with DEP, we've agreed that we're going to need to build up this berm a little bit in that area of the water pollution control plan. It's going to add some costs, and it's already added some engineering and design costs and some delays. But the other thing it's done is we've had to engage Amtrak because that berm is on their property. So now we're talking about dealing with the railroad and getting easements and so on, which is, as you can imagine, isn't easy. So these are, a couple of things that came up. But again, the plant is the major recipient of the referendum money. What are a few of the other things that surprised us and the designers as they got into it? Remediation was more extensive than originally thought. Some of the building deterioration, and again, the flood protection requirements. These were a few things that drove up some of the costs needed at the plant. And again, Woodard and Curran can address any of these during Q&A in detail. Regarding approvals, pending approvals, Connecticut DEP has been involved since day one. They've attended our meetings. We've been meeting with them in Hartford. They've come to Enfield many times. So don't forget, this is a major environmental project, which is under their jurisdiction, but they're also controlling the funding, the grant funding. So they need to be kept apprised and approved basically every step of the way, and they have. We have a folder of different approval letters during the project. And the second bullet here, Amtrak, I just mentioned with the flood protection and the berm, providing protection for the 100-year flood from Beeman's Brook. Other local approvals are done or almost done. Staying with the plant, this is the Enfield, the opinion of probable cost for the plant. This is the construction, the hard costs. And as you look here, considering the size of our plant and the age and the fact that these other numbers are not indexed for inflation, the Enfield cost, again, plant costs for upgrades are below average at this point. We've worked very hard to try and make this process as cost efficient as practical, and there were two what I'll call value engineering processes during this, which again were mandated by the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. But what they did is we had to bring in another firm to take a look at everything we've done and gave us cost-cutting solutions. In a few cases, they said, well, you need to add. That what you've come is not enough, but a lot of times they were looking at cost-cutting. So we've gone through a couple of those processes also. Trying to get the most bang for the buck, understanding that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. You don't upgrade these plants every 5 or 10 years, as evidenced by what's happened here. It's not unusual. This just doesn't happen frequently. I doubt many of us will still be sitting here the next time this comes up. Just a comment, this cost on this table here does not include what we're calling bid alternates, and these are all, again, estimates. To help manage our costs, we've come up with 7 what we call bid alternates, and these are listed in order of priority. And again, Woodard and Curran can address any of these after. These are things we'd like to include, we really want to include in the plan at this time, but we're not sure that the funding will be there. So we need to do the base plant project, and then as the prices come in for these 1 through 7 alternates, we'll be deciding and discussing how many, if any of them, we can roll into this initial contract. And if not, do we fund them over time, and what period of time? So now let's move on to some of the financing questions. Doing some simple math, in 2013 we identified about a $36 million project. We assumed that we were going to get a contribution from the state prison system. There's a contract between Enfield and the state prison system, and we estimate that payment would be about $3.5 million. We did notify the state in November that this project was moving forward and that we look forward to meeting them and discussing their contribution. That we have not heard back, not surprisingly. But that is part of our financial picture. There's a contract. We also assumed in 2013 that we would get almost $5 million in grant funds, and that the rest would be, on the plant side, would be a low-interest loan, 2%. So that left $27.7 million to pick up on sewer rates. Now, on the right side is a pie chart. I just want to walk through a couple of the pieces of the pie so you can understand them. The smallest piece, 1%, is what we call town administrative expense. About a year and a half ago, was decided that rather than us hiring a full-time project manager that would be an employee of the town, we should contract out the project management services. And that is what we did, and that's what Fuss & O'Neill's role is. They're called the owner's project manager. So we solicited quotes from 3 firms that had experience here and ended up selecting Fuss & O'Neill as, again, what's called the owner's project manager. They're basically our eyes and ears, and in fact, an extension of the staff. So that's what that 1% is. Then we move on to 6%. I'll talk about that, which is collection. As we got into the project, we realized there were 3 2015 roads projects that were ready to roll but had underlying sewer issues. So after having a number of discussions with the town council about the need to be proactive in replacing our infrastructure ahead of the roads programs. In other words, let's not build a new road and then dig it up next year because pick your utility. And we work very closely with the water companies and Eversource and scheduling and making sure that they know what our road schedule is and give them the chance to get ahead of us and replace their infrastructure, which has been done all around town. We wanted to treat our wastewater department the same way, treat them like a utility. There's pipes in the ground, so if we have a roads project, let's engage the Water Pollution Control Division. Let's have them look at those sewer pipes and let's decide if they need replacing or repair. And we've done that on 3 different roads projects. So those became an immediate need for the referendum funding. So those 3 happen to be Bridge Lane, which is shortly going out to bid. There's a project called Thompsonville Southeast. The 2 streets there of concern are College and Pleasant. And then Thompsonville Southwest, and there's a number of streets there that have failing sewer systems: Cross, Pease, South, Spring Street, and Maple Avenue. So again, what we've done is we've earmarked some of the referendum funds for collection so we can replace the sewers on those roads, which are scheduled to be done in the next year or 2. Pump stations here, 6%. Again, that is some money for design, and also we can start construction on a high-priority pump station. We have plant design at 7%, and then we have construction, administration, inspection in here at 9%. And the largest piece of the pie is 71%, and that would be for the plant. That's the plant base bid. Does not include the alternates. So just want to make sure we covered that. Going back to the rate study, again, the initial plan was developed in 2013, and there were 6 major cost components in this column chart. The rates were set in 2013, and we need to revisit the actuals, revenues, and the assumptions, and I think we'll be prepared to present that to you in February in terms of how the rate structure has worked and what adjustments to the rate structure need to be made moving forward. Again, they've been held steady for 5 years. So what are the next steps? Tonight we're providing as I said, a executive summary type update. The bids are due on the plant on February 1st. And after the presentation, we do have a copy of all this handouts we can give you. We're meeting again on the 5th to take care of some administrative approvals. We need to submit our Clean Water Fund grant application in February, make our decisions on which of those 7 alternates, project alternates, we can or can't include, give you a rate review and a recommendation in February and March, award the contract in early March, begin construction in the spring, and again, depending on the rate review, adopt revised sewer rates again in the spring, effective July 1st. That concludes our prepared remarks, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any questions from the council? Commissioner Arnone.
So in the original 36 million, we had cut out 3 separate chunks of that money: plant, pump stations, roads. Do you have those exact amounts of how we cut that out in the very beginning? I know how we designated what was going to go where. I don't.
I don't have the exact numbers, but roughly it
That's
was 27 million for the plant, and then the remaining 9 to 10 million was for the collection systems and pump stations. The pump stations were probably 6 of it, and then the remaining 3 or 4 was going to be collection systems. And things have changed a little. You know, clearly Jonathan outlined some of the collection system projects, the pipe projects that have been elevated to a higher level. And we're dealing with a fixed 36 million. So that means it's the pinching, you know, it's a balloon. You squeeze it here, it pokes there. You squeeze it there, it pokes there. So we're working within that 36 million the best we can.
So what's always confusing me about the money that actually is set aside for sewer pipes that the town owns. So here's the blur of our duties as a commissioner, and you kind of had to make me chuckle when you put your slide up with the update was to the town council. We're the Water Pollution Control Authority right now, and we have a whole nother scope. So when we spend money on roads and sewer pipes under the road that the town owns, that, to me, is kind of a blurry area for both the town council, because you said you brought it before us as a town council and not before us as a commission. Because if we looked at it as a commission, it was really going to have a huge impact on the amount of money that would go to pump stations as well as the sewer plant. So if the town owns those sewer pipes, there is the argument that the town also does the replacement of those on the budget of Public Works. Until that changes, that's the way it has always been in this town. And now we have changed to a ratepayer system. So that I would like to get a little clarification on also who actually owns a sewer pipe, and should the ratepayers, if the town uses a sewer pipe, the sewer lines as a part of their grand list of what the town's worth, should we be replacing those sewer pipes through the bond money itself? So it's just a question, and a lot of towns don't. It's Public Works that actually owns those. We maintain them as commissioners. When we put our town hats on as counselors, where the confusion is, we own them, and we actually replace them. So that, and I've had this conversation before, may need to change, and the commission may need to change that, and of course it'll reflect in the rates, where we end up in the rates if we decide to take that burden away from the Public Works. So that's bothered me enormously through this whole process, that now the pump stations, which are in horrible shape, and I know this for a fact personally, and we don't have now, we have this huge amount of mechanical work to actually replace some pump stations that we have that they don't even make parts for anymore. Most of our pneumatic stations, you'd have to go out and have the parts machined, because they're just not, nobody uses that kind of station anymore. They're old, and we've heard this, and this is, excuse me for the base of a lot of new members here today, that we've gone through in the last several years in this upgrade in the plant. So if you go back to slide, if you could, and I won't belabor this too much, but if you can go back to your slide with the alternatives. And this kind of is a bothersome thing too. Additional blowers, additional to what? To the old blowers?
There's 2 in the basement.
Two new?
Yeah, there's
2 new ones in the basement.
2 new blowers in the base bid, and additional blowers would be ideal, but we can work with the existing blowers. If, the plant will operate with the existing blowers, it's just not ideal.
So the existing blowers, and again,
Plus the 2 new ones, by the way.
as commissioners, we really need to know this. We need to know, under state statute, mind you, our liability to the sewer plant is to know as much about this plant from our staff as staff knows, because we are under statute. We need to make these decisions. So additional blowers, for instance, the 4 they had ran on 4 blowers for a number of years, and it's tough when you don't have these. These are major components to the sewer plant. Gravity thickeners. I mean, we may not know what the heck any of that is, but we should. And that bothers me. We're going to lose a gravity thickener, and our influence screen. Some of the major process of this upgrade was the screens that were in such bad shape at the sewer plant. So I'm worried that we're not getting what we really need. So, and we would not know that because we haven't met since May of last year. And when we met for May of last year, I don't think I've sat in a meeting that was over 10 minutes longer in 6 years of being on the council. And that's not we're not doing our due diligence. Yes, please.
Just a couple comments. And I'm going to ask Woodard and Kern to address the alternates in a little more detail.
Please.
Okay, because I think we need to talk about that.
yeah.
That's why we're putting stuff up here. We can get it as high or as detailed as you like. But with regards to the question over who pays for sewers under the roads, the language of the roads referenda that have passed specifically say that that money cannot be used for the sewers. So
you find where you can get it from.
the
To be
referenda
perfectly honest.
here for $36 million said collection systems, and we have roads projects that we're ready to, they're ready to go. So we had to say, well, do we have any other, we're not going to go for another referendum right now. So we had to make some decisions, what's needed today, tomorrow, and of course we could go ahead and do those roads and not do the sewers. That's how the town has been doing it up until now. We're trying to transition the thinking of the town and to treat our wastewater project like a real utility with its own needs, just like we expect from Eversource and Connecticut Water and Hazardville in terms of replacing pipes under roads, brand new roads that are going in, so we don't want to dig them up. But that is always an option. We decided, or I recommended, that we not go that way, that we're doing the roads projects, they're on the table, let's replace the sewers, and understanding that there was a trade-off, the bubble, and that there was some pump station work, so it was going to have to be deferred. So we set up this steady stream of funding. But you could question all those, that's kind of the thinking, and maybe the next roads referendum doesn't exclude the sewers from the roads project, but this one did, so we couldn't use that money for the sewer project. But I'd like Woodard and Kern to talk about the alternates, just to make sure everyone understands what what is and is not included in the base bid.
Yep. Yeah, so I can understand why you were thinking that other items were not included. So to get a little more in depth, this is, item 1 is the second gravity thickener, so there is a gravity thickener in the base bid, thankfully. A second gravity thickener would certainly be more helpful for processing solids if we ever had to take the first one down. It's good to have 2 of anything, but we are getting 1 in the base bid. For the second alternate, there is a screen. In the base bid, there is only 1, so same argument. You don't have that second backup of a mechanical screen. We do have 1 new mechanical screen in the base, and thankfully there is a building around the headworks, so that screen will be certainly more protected than the current one is. Right now, the current screen, that's where all the wastewater comes in. That's kind of the first thing that happens, just to give a little background, and it's exposed to freezing conditions. So thankfully, we are getting the building in the base bid. Additional blowers, as Tom mentioned, there are 4 in the treatment plant right now. There are 2 blowers being replaced as part of the base bid. Those will operate daily. The other 2 are being kept in line, the 2 existing ones. And if conditions are met, if there's really high flows, if necessary, which we think is about once a year, we would have to switch over to those existing ones. They will not run in parallel with the new ones. So the alternate is to have all 4 new blowers, so those other 2 would kick on in times of additional treatment need. The carbon polisher, item 4. There is an odor control bioscrubber in the base bid right now. This is just for a little extra treatment of the air. So we do believe the bioscrubber in the base bid is going to alleviate a lot of the odor problems. There is an order of consent for odors at the treatment plant right now. That's just another stage of treatment, but it's very high level. 5, the generator load bank. That is for testing of the generator under full load. The generator, I think, is relatively on the new side, so there is a functioning generator that does run the treatment plant. This is for testing of that generator. 6, retrofitting handrails. A lot of the handrails are, I think it's 6 inches short compared to OSHA. So this would be a retrofit adding an additional length of handrail. And then 7, right now the sludge pump station has concrete kind of panels on the outside as its exterior facade. We were going to maybe do some patching and put aluminum panels for a whole new kind of facelift, but that is really aesthetics. So now we are patching the concrete where there are holes and leaving what's existing.
So if I may, just to wrap up my last question. So in 2 things. In the beginning, actually, Bill and I both were attending meetings representing the commission and following this through. So at one time, I had all the books from the very beginning, and I still have them, and Bill and I would update the commission. So that went away. So now there's there's been no representation from the commission on in any of those meetings for a little time. I think Bill hung on a little longer than I did, was invited. So I'd like to see what we have today, and I think everybody should see what we have for a plan. I've never seen the plan. I haven't seen the plan in a couple of years now. So I don't know where we are with this whole thing, and I think that's just a good overview of each structure that we're actually getting with the plan. Because I really think, and I've said this before, that we need to take a more proactive role in this upgrade. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it, and hope to have you back many a time between now and then.
Thank you. Commissioner Suzak.
Okay, I just have 2 quick questions. I guess you talked about a CIP fund that is this an annual fund that you put $550,000 into? Oh, it's in my budget book. Of course it is.
I brought the budget book because I anticipated this question.
Mine's in my car for tomorrow night. Thank you.
I would just tell you what page. If you look at page 98 and 99 of the budget book, that is the capital improvement plan for the water pollution control facility. That's the annual capital improvement plan, and there's a line, we're just going to call out the pump station line, showing every year $550,000 and other things in there too. But that's what I'm talking about. So it is here and on page 98 and 99.
Right, and from that, you make projects that are under the referendum limit to do your improvements to your pump stations. Now, I understand when they first started talking about this that there was more grant money for pump stations than there was for the regular plant. Is that still true?
Absolutely true. So when we first started, the Connecticut DP had a grant program, where you could get some loan money, but then they would do some grants on top of that for pump station upgrades. That program did disappear. They haven't refunded it. They didn't find enough interest, although us in the wastewater profession say the interest is there. We just didn't get there fast enough because it takes time to get to those things. So we wish they had maintained it, but like all state agencies, they're seeing the cuts as well.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I think it's worth pointing out that we had to accelerate this design, believe it or not, by about a year. So usually these designs take 18 months to 24 months. We did it in about 12 months to make sure that we would fall under this fiscal year, the state's fiscal year, of the grant program for the treatment plant upgrade. So that was a bit of a fight, and I know there was support from some of the counselors and writing letters and doing things, but it worked. And so we were able to stay within the last budget. So that support was critical to that grant portion that's in the current project.
Okay, and I just have one last question, and this was brought up at budget one time, and it's the end-all product that needs to be disposed of. Would that be cake or liquid?
Great question, and it's really both, but mostly liquid.
Okay.
So in the end, we take the influent wastewater, we take out the solids, and then the liquid goes to the river, and then what you saw is the gravity thickeners, they handle the solids, and that comes out as basically a cake, which currently is being incinerated.
Okay, and that's easy for us to find a place that will process the end product.
Another really complicated but very good question. Right now, it's fairly easy, but it can get, it's a market. The biosolids is a market.
I
so
understand that from the budget.
It moves. So right now, we're okay.
Okay.
And we do think there's going to be new players in that market. And frankly, we're trying to change state requirements so we could use it as land application. Biosolids on farms, for instance, it's really good for fertilizer. But in Connecticut, one of the few states in the country, we're not allowed to do that.
Okay.
So we have to burn it at a higher cost than just land applying it at farms. So we're working on it as an industry, not as an end field thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Any other questions? I had a couple. Just curious, and sorry if this is, someone's asked this question before. Can we lease any of the alternative equipment? Or is it something we have to purchase outright?
That's a good question. It's not. There's a. I guess there's a potential to lease anything. The grind on this equipment would be such that, over a 30-year lease, you're buying it. Right. And with the low interest loan that we have with the state, which is about 2%,
Right.
It actually vets better than probably a lease, but it can be done.
What about if, like, the sort of the backup equipment? That's maybe my question.
That's a good question, and that's something we haven't gone too far down the road on because we don't know where the alternates are coming in.
Okay.
But it's possible that we could do that, and particularly the gravity thickeners, people do rent or lease those at times.
The Beeman's Brook, I remember back in the 90s that there was a capital project when it used to go down, Bridge Lane and it would flood all the time. So those pipes have been replaced already, or at least in a recent past. This is just about a berm, right, in case we have a 100-year flood?
Yeah, just as a really quick explanation. So Beeman's Brook, and flows over that area. The idea, regardless of the pipe age, and we're not exactly sure when they were most recently done, but if that, rainfall happens at a level that overtops that, it would back up from the south towards the property. So this berm would keep the floodwaters back. It's only a few feet high. I think it's three or 4 feet.
Amtrak gotten
2.5 feet.
Has Amtrak gotten back to us?
They have acknowledged that they've gotten our packages, but there's so one main person that we work with is in real estate. He actually receives comments from 16 different sections. We have not received those comments yet, so we know that it's been distributed, but we have not seen comments back. We have called. We're even offering an in-person meeting if that's necessary.
Got it. I guess along the same lines, when do we expect to hear from the State Department of Corrections? It's pretty big. It's pretty big, having out there, before this project moves forward.
I think we don't have a strategy or a plan for following up. I think that's something we should all talk about. I don't think it's something that staff alone should be coming up with. And we sent a letter, which there was a contractually required letter stating, we're putting you on notice, and this is what the dollars look like. Was sent to Commissioner Barnes, and I think at this point maybe that's a discussion with the council.
Closing with the prison, we probably should be doing this pretty quickly, I would assume. That's the concern, right?
Well, they're still going to be using the sewers.
So what would you recommend, that we do it have another meeting of this commission, or, because I don't want to wait with them closing one of the prisons and.
Well, we do have another meeting tentatively scheduled for February 5th.
Okay.
So that's already
Could we have a
scheduled. That's only a few weeks away, and maybe there can be some discussions with the manager before then about best approach and how to get to OPM on that topic.
In the last question, I apologize. So the pump stations, have we replaced any of the 16, or all 16 need to be replaced?
It's various improvements at the 16. You're not replacing
No, okay,
16
improvements,
full
sorry,
pump
yeah.
stations. There are 4 full replacements that we'd suggest. Of course, stage, those wouldn't happen immediately, but Yeah, so it ranges anywhere from full pump station replacement to maybe a small generator or just the pumps themselves. So it's a wide range, but I think Mr. Slash has only done anything that's been in dire need. So the upgrades that were laid out we haven't followed through yet.
And again, going back to the website, I brought that slide back up. If you want to know what needs to be done at any pump station, you can go to the website
Okay.
and click on it. And I believe it has a list. Oh, this
Okay.
one just needs a generator. This one needs $500,000 of blah. You know, it's all listed there.
Oh, okay, great.
So I don't know that off the top of my head. And
good to know.
I
Thank
would
you.
go to the website myself.
Thank you. Commissioner Ungar.
Hi, thank you for coming out. This is very interesting and informative. I appreciate your time. You mentioned we have 16 pump stations. How does that compare to the state? Like, is that adequate? Is that average for our size, for our population?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have, we could benchmark it and get very specific, but you need more pump stations when you have more hills. So it's really about the topography. So, and the size of the collection system. 16 is probably about average here in Connecticut. It's roughly average. It's a little higher than some, but at 10 million gallons per day, that's the MGD. You're a little bigger than most too. So it's about average. There are, there's not too many communities in the 30s, but there's a few in the, single digits. So you're about average.
It's all about the hills.
It's all about the hills.
All set? Commissioner Muller.
What type of remediation are we looking at?
Remediation's like the specific to hazardous materials.
Yeah.
So there was, being a plant designed originally in the 70s, there's some, there's caulking. So there's PCBs in the caulking. There's asbestos in the insulation and in the soundproofing of some of the equipment.
Yeah, so as Mr. Sheehan was saying, the blower room, there's a lot of noise generated in there, so that is where asbestos is on the ceiling and the walls. There is also an incinerator on the site. It was used very little in the 70s, so it's really just an item that's sitting there taking up space that has asbestos brick in it. So those are the major components.
All set? Commissioner Falk.
You had brought up on numerous occasions, if we have questions, go to the website. Well, I want to give you an example. I have one of those subtract meters for my lawn sprinklers. Deduct meters. And you only use it about 3 times a year. For the life of me, I could never find out where to go. I'd spend 20 minutes weaving here and weaving there, trying to find this thing, doing searches. But the last time I went, you actually had a link over on the side. And it worked pretty good. So I'm sure that there's other improvements that you could make to that website to make it easier for the general public to find and use things.
It's a great point. The website has been dynamic. It's changed since inception of the project, and we keep updating it to the level we can. So any suggestions, please feed to Public Works, and we will continue to improve it.
Yeah, when I was referring to the website, in this presentation, I was referring to the website that was specially put together for the whole design project. Something like that was in existence, should have been in existence as soon as we did the sewer use rate. And there's other pieces on the water pollution control website that really are transparent to this particular project right now. So your point's well taken, and we have to make sure that consumers can find what they need on the website. They may not be interested in the pump station,
Right.
but they
Thank
might
you.
want this information. Thank you.
One last quick, Brian, is this being televised? No, sir, it is not. It's not? This commission isn't going to be televised? Any particular reason?
Again, in line with the austerity measures that we implemented earlier on, this particular meeting is not on the regular schedule. So based on our ability and our attempt to control costs, we're only recording those meetings which are regularly scheduled.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So wait, so my question is, so is this council meeting gonna be televised?
Yes, the council meeting will be.
Yeah, already said
will be
regular
recorded.
meeting,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All set
Oh, yeah,
for
all set.
right now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
ZTV was here.
Thank you. We don't have any old business,
We'll ask them to televise.
no new business.
These need to be televised.
There's nothing listed for items of discussion, anything on miscellaneous.
Anytime we're spending that kind of money.
Item 8, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Counselor Fox, second by Commissioner Suzak. All those in favor?
Aye,
Opposed? 10 favor, 0 against.
thank you.
Good to see you, thank you.
Thank you.